Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're starting a new series where we break down professional players' gameplay and in hopes to help you improve in your own gameplay and also understand high-level concepts. Now, in today's episode, what we're going to be discussing is how to push, when to hold, and of course the importance of positioning. So kind of a lot to break down there, but they all tie together. Now, the reason why I'm choosing this section of the footage is you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner that there is 18 teams alive. Now, I'm going to pause real quick because this actually gives us a pretty good location on where you should be playing. So if we look at the mini map on the left-hand side corner, you'll notice that the biggest power play positions are this building, because you know the next zone, this little section here, this building as well here, and then everywhere else. Maybe you could play bridge, maybe play this outside, but then your options and where you start playing start becoming, I guess, less ideal. So whenever you have a lot of teams, this is my best advice for players who are, I guess, starting to learn the game and just jumping in. Whenever you're playing ranked, you want to prioritize zone as much as possible and get to zone. But if the skill of the lobby isn't there and you notice there's still, let's say, over half the lobby is dead in the first round, then you can kind of explore and expand that. Now, in these higher tier lobbies, those options become limited. For example, for Not Moist here, their options and where they can play are going to be difficult, which means that where they have to rotate to later on the mini-map, they're going to have a tough battle getting into those ideal spots, which is why early rotation is always ideal, but you also need to ensure that you get your kill points as well. So let's go and let the footage run. Let's go and give another pause here so you can have a different POV. When utility is utilized, it usually indicates that a fight is committed, because having that utility, again, is not going to be ideal. Also, using a Seer Ultimate really gives you eyeballs and making sure you stop teams from pushing because you're garnering a lot of information. So it does a few things. It deters third parties, it deters people from pushing, it provides information. It does a whole lot in that regard, which is very positive. Now, in this next moment, you're probably wondering why teams might make the rough decision to push early, and sometimes you just have to go for that 50-50 chance, high risk, high reward. So when you see a team kind of try to coexist for space and fight for space, you have to ensure that you're able to maintain your positioning by either maintaining teams off by maintaining a higher position, doing significant amount of damage, or making sure that they respect your space. The reason why teams have a hard time cleaning up is that everyone is assumed in these lobbies to be of equal playing field. Now, if you're watching this playing ranked in pubs, then you make the decision to say, is this team truly better than us, and can we find weak spots? When you find weak spots, just like you saw Falcons do there, let's go and back up and take a look at that. They found a weakness because they got a nice crack and opening, which means that they can full send it. You can start to sacrifice that timing and space because you know that you have the health advantage. And garnering that space and occupying both levels of this building is extremely strong. What's interesting later is that they do decide to leave this building, but it actually lends to their benefit just because you worry of how many teams are going to try to run up. And you have to ask yourself the question, do we want to be in the center and can we fend off those amount of teams? Or can we be in the next power position that is much easier to hold? And those are the big questions that you need to ask yourself. And as you look here, let's take a look at the teams that are on the outer edges, right? This is a great visual because it gives you a lot of information. It says, okay, we see that TSM has their corner, meaning that they have to either fight E8 here, their team. And of course, if they do, that means they're going to have to fight this team and then they're going to have to run out in the open. That makes it really difficult to work your way into the encounter. And so the only thing you can do, especially when you're VOD reviewing, is say, what fight could we have taken sooner and could we have found a flaw, or can we have rotated to get to the ideal position? You'll see that even Moist is getting caught out here. And that's the hard part. It's not necessarily a skill issue. I guess you could, quote unquote, say it's a skill issue because maybe they should have rotated differently or fought for a different position. But sometimes you just don't have the ideal zone. It doesn't pull in your favor. It doesn't give you the best odds. But you can play those odds by playing to where you believe that it's going to pull next. So what we're going to do is pause here. Into the mini-map. Let's see if we get the mini-map information. Let's go and skip ahead right here. Okay. This was a good information because we did see there was still a lot of teams this way. But we do see where the next zone is pulling. And we know that it's only going to pull even further here. Meaning that a lot of these teams have to work their way in here, here, here. So answering the question of when do you push? Usually you're looking for a rather large opening to clear out your backs, because if you clear out your backs sooner, that means that you'll have more space whenever you're working your way in. And otherwise, you'll have to work your way in and then gatekeep them, but you got to watch out for the team if they're going to maintain pressure on you. So you're constantly gauging who's the bigger threat and who do you believe is going to focus you and who is not going to focus you. This becomes a little clear in competitive gaming, or like the highest end, just because you know that some teams are not going to leave their position. We can wholeheartedly say that this team, anyone who is holding a power position is not going to leave to the outer parts of the zone. This is why you hear a lot of pro players kind of complain about the quality of the lobby, so to speak, because some people will make certain plays and say, well, you didn't really have an opening, per se, and you didn't really have the opportunity. Why leave your better spot? And this is actually a better visual right here where you can see Team Falcons just has so much space and they control so much of the zone. Compared to these other teams, whenever the zone closes and we see TSM has to rotate here, either they can evac, but then where are they going to evac to? You're going to have to hard contest something. These teams are better set up, and these unfortunately all have to scrunch together. So you see that this is going to be a problem, and then this is going to be a problem over here. I find all this stuff extremely fascinating to look at. It's always making the assumption everyone is of equal skill level, everyone can aim within a margin of error. But of course, my tip, if you're watching this, is say, well, how can I apply this logic to my own gameplay? Well, a lot of ranked games tend to end pretty early. You know, everyone's fighting outside a zone. So if you happen to go into zone, then push your way out, then at least you have a fallback plan. Usually you use utility, you put a zip line, you wraith portal, you can use altar portal. Anything that gives you utility to get in and then get out is always going to be ideal to help you. So this round is specifically interesting. There's so much to learn here just by watching them. And I encourage you guys, when you're watching ALGS or VOD reviewing, these are the things that you can ask yourself. I know we talked about this in the spectating series and say, okay, when we look at that visual right there, what do we see? How many different pathways? We know that the team in front, what if they decided to evac and push through and then go over here on the right? They could push the team in front, but then they have to deal with the team after. What can they do? I mean, if they could, it would be ideal if they found an opening, clean this up within like 10-15 seconds. That would be ideal. But if they don't, could they have rotated this way? Could they have rotated and isolated somebody out here? What could they have done? What are the options? What utility do they have? Do they have Bangalore ult to kind of slow them down? What do they have in terms of resources? And that's usually what you do when you VOD review, because you can ask yourself those questions. And if your team can't find an opening, you ask, well, who's watching the angle? Where can we play, and what is actually possible? This is a very common end zone, and what you start to do when you start seeing, you see there's the evac tower, and the reason why they're going is because they know, like we had mentioned, there's too many teams in front to deal with, and the zone is closing. You're literally going for what you call like a Hail Mary. NRG has a decent spot for now, and they're occupying space, and you're probably asking the question, why don't teams just push? And let's say they got a knock, why wouldn't they push that? Because you don't want to give up your space. You don't want to give up your space unless their space is even better than your space, and then you overtake that space instead. And that's going to give you a lot more of a benefit. This is why Bangalore is so powerful, because it gives you that ability to cross. Let's see, manage to cross right there. Otherwise, you know, if you don't have Bang, then you can't cross effectively, and then you end up in a whole lot of trouble. But we're going to see the patience where it does pay off. And you do have to learn how to fight at some point. I want to point that out. You just can't always hide and wait for the zone. You have to fight for what's yours. Because then you're seeing all the teams here, whenever sometimes they don't really fight for the ideal positioning and going for when they see an opportunity, then all that happens is that the zone does the work, like you saw what happened with Not Moist. Or another team will fight and shoot you at a different angle, and they never really give you the opportunity to exactly win, right? So here we see NRG decide to push in this scenario. Pretty strong plays. And keep in mind, here's everything's hindsight 2020. Okay, when we look at this, hindsight 2020. Could they have pushed the team on the north? Could they push the team on the south? Could they have pushed underneath the building that you're looking here? There's always those what ifs. And in pro play, there's so much tension, and there's no really calling out any of these players or do anything bad, because when you're under pressure, even the easiest thing can become the most complicated. So shout out to all these players. That's not me even riding the fence and then saying, oh, somebody is bad. It generally is not as easy as it looks when you're under that pressure. And I encourage the same thing when you're playing ranked or when you're playing pubs. You know that feeling whenever you feel that pressure. All of a sudden something that was so difficult or so easy, flip-flop that, is now extremely difficult. If you enjoy the series, don't forget to leave a like. I think we should do a lot more of these and review what could have happened and how teams played them out, and could they have pretty much won them. So then we see the different Falcons has a fantastic spot here, and they're essentially bullying. This is what Falcons is really great at doing, essentially bullying into space that they want. Right now, the reason why this is such a powerful position, because it's center of zone, they have height, they have areas they can look. You see them fighting over there. The reason why, especially probably asking the question, let's take a look at this visual here. Why doesn't Falcon just go in or drop on the team underneath? Is because they know that they're going to get thirded and pressured from a distance. So right now with game-winning spot, the best thing that they can do after they fought, keep in mind they've already fought for positioning. They won here and they just won this. They fight for what they want, but at some point you have to slow it down and say, by going in here, what are we gaining? And can we do it quickly and efficiently enough? They know there's a team down below. They know there's teams from this angle and from the other angle. And so that kind of gives you the information that you need to say, okay, slow down now. Now is not the time to fight. The teams over here have to fight. Like we mentioned, NRG has to win this. If they can win a nice, clean fight here, then they can pick up their utility and then coexist with another team and keep pushing. But you have to ask yourself, how many fights is it going to take to get to the ideal positioning? And then when you VOD review, you say, maybe we need to rotate sooner because it took way too many fights to get to where we're at. Or we need to find a different utility, or maybe we need to figure out where zone is, pull up a zone legend. I mean, this is why people run Fuse. Excuse me, I had that little bit of hiccup there. So if you're wondering why I muted, a little bit of a hiccup, that's okay. So now this puts Falcons in literally the best possible scenario. Everyone is now stuck on the other end, as long as they don't get cracked and don't get knocked. Now, a team can definitely try to take their space, but with the amount of teams nearby, the best thing they can do is pretty much what you see. You see what happens. Everyone knows what the ideal place is going to be, and everyone's fighting for it. Because this pretty much happens simultaneously. Smoke, they want that space underneath because they know it's a good spot. You don't want to be out in the open because it's, Falcons is going to blast you from here, and then if anybody's over here. So essentially, they just land right on top of each other. The only thing you can do in that scenario is go for the positioning just a bit sooner, have utility ready, already have this hunkered down, but all those things happen in hindsight 2020. When you're VOD reviewing, you can get that information, and energy essentially gets stuck here. Now, all Falcons has to do is literally just wait it out. So then you ask the question, when do you fight? When do you push? The other teams are going to hear this. It's really hard for Native to really do anything here because they're underneath and they're getting picked off from LG's roster. So this is a great visual as well. Because if you're other teams, you would ask the question, what can you do, right? You have complexity, which is probably in a somewhat decent spot for now because they can hide underneath on the left side. LG, if they were able to get this knock and maybe take their spot from them, because realistically, Falcons is not going to drop even if they manage to get a nice clean sweep underneath here. They're not going to drop in that spot, and they're not going to move in over here because when you notice the zone, it pulls directly pretty much on top of them. So their other teams either have to find a way to clean sweep and find an opening without Falcons putting any pressure, which is hard. You can use utility to slow Falcons down. Let's say you're throwing like a bang ult, but then you might use it for utility instead in the end. But at some point, they have the uphill battle. This is probably going to be the hardest fight for them. They have a somewhat decent chance, but they're going to end up getting shoved here, and Falcons has the highest probability to win the overall encounter here. There's a smoke. So you smoke, you use bang ult, get them inside the building to stop, depending on what your goal is, and it depends on your IGL saying, hey, shove left or shove right. What are we going to aim for? How are we going to do it? And do everything cohesively and try to do it as efficiently as possible, which is great because actually Falcons is doing pretty much the work for them. And even going underneath, it pretty much means that they're just going to get picked on from above. So you see where the zone, this is a really good indicator in the left-hand side. You see where the zone, that means that, like I said, LG's team has to push forward. Complexity is going to get stuck and have to push in here. Falcons, all they have to do to make sure is not to get cracked, not to go down. They've already got enough kills. They're doing great. They're doing fantastic. Everything is great because they fought whenever it mattered most. So you have to ask yourself the question, does this positioning matter? And even though they saw a lot going on, they still kept to their wits and played patiently once they realized what the advantage they had. So LG's team has a rough rotation there. Like I said, the only thing you can do, and you have to ask yourself the question, could we have rotated safely with a smoke, another smoke, a bang ult? Do we do it all together? And those are the big questions. Because, I mean, if you try to do it all together at this point, maybe, that's where cohesion of just trying to leave all at once is going to be a little better instead of going one at a time. Because then, sometimes that happens. But it's really hard when you're in the heat of the moment and waiting for stuff like that. Comms and communication with your team and how you're going to do it is vital. Which in the next episode, what I'd like to highlight next is the power of reset and how good these teams are at resetting. And if you would like, we can definitely cover that as well. So that's why you see teams like this not pushing, despite them being a pushing team. All they have to do is wait for the right opportunity. So LG pushed forward, they found their footing, they're getting as much resources. It could have been cleaner right now, that's why they're a little low. And then, of course, at this point, Falcons decides to push because it is justified, because they have the advantage on them and they have to keep them stuck in that corner, which is why they drop on them, because they have the advantage. So it got a little sloppy, a little messy there, but they still had it, and which causes them for the win. So again, the theme overall here and what to learn is the patience of when you push. Why are you pushing? What positioning are you gaining? You saw Falcons really gain some strong position in the building, then pushed out and find another strong positioning. And then ask yourself, can you do it cohesively? Can you do it quickly? Can you find an opening? And when you VOD review, ask yourself, how many fights did it take to even get to that point? And that's really the hard part when it comes to all of this, is having to understand that sometimes you might have put your team in just too much of uphill battle, and sometimes it's just the power of zone, where you're getting gated or you're outside of zone. And if you could have cleaned up that fight maybe 10-15 seconds sooner, it does make a big difference. Can you rotate over? And timing is of the essence. This was my first attempt at the series. It's not going to be perfect, but I really kind of want to put it out there. I want it to feel like almost like we're commentating, but giving a shoutcasting version, because I really miss shoutcasting a lot. Again, shout out to the ALGS team for allowing me to review this footage for you guys and talk through some other stuff, and hopefully it helps you guys with your rotations. Don't be afraid to take fights. I always say take fights, but with purpose. You do want to fight. You can't just let the zone do all the work, and you can't let other teams occupy more space than you. That's why I say securing buildings, taking height, putting pressure, getting teams deterred, and we can cover that more as we break down the series, because I think it'll really help you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all in the next one.